want to go back. He wants to go back. I want to go back to the farm. Go back far away from home, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. down on the farm.
I'm Scott Bain. They call me the old farmer. I have been having trouble storing the clamps I use for woodworking. I need a temporary fix until we can finish the drywall in the garage, paint, and run electricity. It's just too hot to safely do such work in the garage. This is a prototype of a portable clamp holder and is a temporary solution because James Hamilton, Stumpy Nubs, has designed a wall mount rack for clamps. The holders of the clamps slide along a French cleat-style rail, and therefore the distance between clamp columns can be adjusted. I have quite a few wood clamps, as you can see. This does not even show the bar clamps or the farming clamps such as C-clamps. I am only concerned with my tabletop clamps used in woodworking. If I included all the clamps while excluding the bar clamps, the weight would be awkward to move around. I want to keep this as a portable clamp rack that I can move around the garage as needed, or even taken on the road. I still have several more clamps to add to the rack besides those seen in the video. The total amount of clamps I want on this rack is 21, but I think I can squeeze maybe one more onto the rack besides the 21. I'm using scrap wood, and I'm not even worried about sanding or any of the other finishing efforts that could be applied. This is only a prototype. The question is, does this work? And is it too heavy? I want it to be light enough so that Mrs. Old Farmer can move the rack around for her projects. I don't have to worry about super tight accuracy. Eyeballing it will be accurate enough if looking pretty is not your goal. The reason I made it on a J-frame is it allows for 2 rows of clamps instead of just one. It also helps with the stability of the rack. If you wanted to mount the rack, eliminating the portability feature, you could add an additional row behind the taller tier, making it a 3 or 4 tier rack for clamps. Or you could design something that would hold bar clamps behind the top tier. Think of this clamp rack as you would a sandwich. You can make it any way you want, and it would still be made correctly. Just remember, if it gets around 120 feet in height, you will have to add FAA beacons to the rack so planes won't fly into it. I'm doing this as fast as I can because it's about 90 degrees in the garage and it's hard to work, especially since we are also dealing with high humidity. I think I have an extra fan that I can use in the garage. I'll check on that later. A couple of times, because of the heat, I ran the screws in wrong and had to re-drill the holes and reset the screws. I'm not looking for pretty, only function. Having 2 screws go in wrong are the only 2 mistakes I think I made. And no farmers were injured in the making of this video. Instead of the typical drywall screws I have used in the past, I picked up some actual wood screws. AILMENT Power Pro number 9 by 2.5 inch. Now that I've tried them out, I ordered in 5 pounds of the fasteners. Things like screws and nails I feel should always be on hand for quick projects. I will no longer buy Phillips or standard straight screws. They will either be Torx or Robertson. I still have a lot of the other screws to use up. If the locals won't carry Torx or Robertson, I will order online. Proper tools for the job also means proper fasteners for the job. As for the Hillman Power Pro screws, they made it easier to screw wooden things together. There is a reamer that's above the screwing part of the fastener that reams out the hole. It keeps the top piece of wood from being grabbed after the screw enters the second piece of wood. This feature does make it easier to fasten boards together. If they weren't good, I would not have ordered in 5 pounds of screws. I have no relationship with Hillman. This is just my opinion. We went to a big box store the other day and only bought what we wanted and the way we wanted it. If they didn't have exactly what we wanted, we will order online. And sadly to say, we will have to order online for items that should have been carried in the store. It wasn't that they were out of an item, they didn't carry it at all. Remember, we have the final no on products we buy, but we prefer to buy local if we can. This clamp stand is a simple J design. I made 2 wooden J's and hooked them together with a piece of doorway trim from our old pantry. The clamps will fit across, clamped to the doorway trim. The frame was standard 2x4 and has been drying in the garage for a couple of years, so it shouldn't move around as does greenwood. I think if this rack was professionally made, it could be sold to those interested in a portable rack. Those with a welder could make a steel version that could be lighter and take up a bit less space. It was very helpful to be able to use a clamp and clamp it to the workbench. This way the wood lay flat on the bench and was easier to drill and screw. This is the first woodworking bench I've had. I didn't know how much it helped with making things. If you don't have a workbench, I have done a review of the Harbor Freight Franklin workstation. It could be a first step solution for those who don't have a workbench. I highly recommend watching my review. It is video number 77. If this rack needed to be professional looking, I would have cut the pieces on a table saw and sand as well as round the edges, and then finish with shellac or some other wood finish. I think I would have half-lapped the joints for a better fit too. Later, when we get the drywall finished and painted along with running electrical, I'll make something along the lines of Stumpy Nubs' wall-mounted clamp holder. I don't know if I'll finish hanging the drywall or have it done professionally. I have hung enough drywalls so that I learned how to do it the right way, not the way that some Uncle Bob usually hangs it. This is not to diminish the skills that most Uncle Bobs have in hanging drywall. Thoughts about it after completing and using it for several days. I think I would add a handle somewhere to make it easier to carry, but it should not take away from the number of clamps that the rack can hold. As for size, I would not make it any larger. This is about as large as it should be, otherwise it would be too heavy and awkward to move about. The clamps can be clamped tight so that it could travel in the back of a pickup truck without coming off the rack. This is the old farmer, Scott Bain, saying, "Be well."